There's a war that leaves no blood, no fire, no sound. It happens in boardrooms, in bedrooms, in text messages left on read. It unfolds in side glances, in sarcastic laughs, in the silence after you speak. It's a quiet kind of violence, the kind that doesn't bruise skin but dents the soul. This is the war of disrespect, and you felt it. You walk into a room and someone's tone is colder than the air. You speak, but your words seem to dissolve before they hit the ears of those around you. You try to set a boundary, and they laugh. Or worse, ignore it. This isn't paranoia. This isn't weakness. This is the real terrain of human power and how it's traded, stolen, tested. And it begs the question, how do you truly respond to someone who doesn't respect you? Not just pretend to rise above it. Not just hold it in until it eats at your sleep. Not just fire back and become what you hate. No. You want mastery. You want clarity. You want to hold the throne inside you, even when the world around you tries to knock it over. This is not a motivational video. This is not a self-help shortcut. This is a philosophical weapon forged through fire, silence, humiliation, and the wisdom of empires that came before you. Today, wisdom seekers, we enter the mind of the Stoic, not the passive, cold man some misunderstand, but the warrior of calm, the strategist of self, the man who fights the hardest battles, not with his fists, but with his fortitude. Stoicism is not about suppressing emotion. It is about becoming so familiar with suffering that it can no longer manipulate you. It is not about letting people walk all over you. It is about building such an unshakable ground within you that no one can stand above you without your permission. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and wrote to himself, not to boast, but to remember that true power begins within. Seneca was exiled, betrayed, and hunted, and still wrote letters that echo through time like whispers from Olympus. Epictetus was born a slave, and yet, through philosophy, became freer than emperors. So now, in the quiet of your mind, where your dignity has been bruised and your strength questioned, it's time to sharpen your weapon. The world will always have people who do not respect you. What you choose to do about it, that is the only thing that belongs entirely to you. You are not here to be liked, you are here to be sovereign. And today, we begin. 6 deeply carved strategies, forged from philosophy, battle-tested by centuries of men like you, and designed to transform you from a man who merely survives disrespect to a man who transcends it. Sit still. Listen like your future depends on it, because it does. Make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't yet. Every like, subscribe helps us continue our mission of sharing knowledge, and leave a comment below and share your opinion on these strategies, or tell me which one resonates with you the most. Ready to unlock more wisdom? Let's get started. Strategy 1. The unseen mirror. There is a strange truth that most men never discover. Those who disrespect you often reveal more about themselves than about you. But most men miss this. They respond, they react, they chase ghosts. The Stoics, however, knew a deeper truth, that every insult, every act of dismissal, every gesture of contempt is not a judgment, but a reflection. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury," he wasn't offering a poetic idea. He was issuing a command: do not become what you despise. That is the first law of inner empire. But how do you resist the transformation? How do you avoid becoming the very thing that wounded you? You use the mirror, the unseen one, the one that's always there. In words thrown at you, in eyes that won't meet yours, in the smirk of someone who thinks they own the air you breathe. The one that reflects not your weakness, but their fear. Disrespect is often a camouflage. It cloaks envy in casual jokes. It wraps insecurity in arrogance. It hides admiration behind criticism. Why? Because it's easier to attack what you don't understand than to admit you wish you had it. The man who disrespects you is often telling you this: you possess something I cannot touch, so I will try to bring it down. But the trap is ancient, and it waits for you to fall into it. If you react with rage, you've surrendered your position. If you need their validation, you've already handed them power. The Stoics believed that the only true judge is your own conscience. Epictetus wrote, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." In other words, you agreed to be disturbed. You signed the invisible contract that says, your disrespect has authority over me. Rip that contract up. Stand still, let them speak, and see the mirror. Ask yourself, not, why are they doing this to me? But, what does their behavior reveal about their own struggle? This doesn't mean you excuse it. It doesn't mean you accept it. It means you understand it. And in that understanding, you gain the one advantage that most men never wield: psychological elevation. When a king is insulted by a jester, does he draw his sword? No. He knows that the jester cannot dethrone him unless the king stoops to his level. You do not honor disrespect by reacting to it. You dissolve it with silence, with unwavering presence, with the clarity of someone who has nothing to prove. Because here's what no one teaches you. Respect is never taken. It is sensed. It rises from a man whose self-worth is not tied to opinion, to applause, to popularity, or to dominance. It rises from alignment, the fierce, unshakable alignment between who you are and who you refuse to stop being. You must become immune to the illusions of control. When someone tries to diminish you, they are trying to control your state. But the Stoic rejects this. The Stoic rules himself. Seneca once warned, "You want to be admired? Then begin by being admirable." And this means never allowing the shallow actions of others to muddy the deep waters of your own character. Think of a mountain. Wind whistles around it, snow falls upon it, lightning strikes, but the mountain remains. It watches centuries pass. Empires rise and fall. Voices cry and vanish. That is you, wisdom seeker. You must learn to listen without internalizing, to see without absorbing, to be among wolves without losing the softness of your wisdom or the sharpness of your mind. Because those who disrespect you, especially repeatedly, are not challenging your worth. They are exposing their own fracture. And when you realize this, you stop playing the role of the offended. You start playing the role of the observer. This is not detachment. This is a higher form of engagement, where your dignity is no longer on loan to every person you meet. It is yours. It is protected. It is sovereign. There is a quiet power in the man who sees through people without needing to defeat them, who knows what they're doing and simply does not flinch. This is why the first strategy is the unseen mirror. Because once you can look through disrespect and see the soul behind it, you are no longer a victim. You are no longer confused. You are no longer tempted to fight shadows. You are aware. You are still. You are unshakable. And the moment you achieve that, the game ends, because they cannot touch what does not move. Strategy 2. The iron border. There are men who speak of boundaries like fences, fragile, wooden lines that tremble when someone pushes too hard. But the Stoic builds borders from iron, not visible ones, not physical ones, internal ones. Invisible walls of principle forged in silence, heated by clarity and cooled by unshakable self-respect. Disrespect enters your life not only when someone crosses a line, but when you erase it, not all at once, not in fire, but in slow erosion. A joke you let slide, a tone you accepted, a request you fulfilled, even when it insulted your time. 100 small permissions. And then one day you wake up and realize they no longer see you. But here's the truth. No one will protect your dignity for you. Not your friends, not your family, not even those who say they love you. That is your job. That is your temple. And if you do not defend its doors, do not be surprised when people walk in with dirty feet. The Stoics never believed in confrontation for its own sake, but they believed in the sanctity of the self, that sacred ground within every man that must not be violated. And when it is, not by fists but by manipulation, disregard, or mockery, that man must speak or he will rot from the inside out. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Let that adversity be the test. When someone pushes against you, not violently, but with the casual weight of disrespect, you are being given a moment to either collapse or define your edges, and you must speak, not loudly, not emotionally, but clearly. The man who waits until he is enraged to defend his dignity has already lost it. He has taught the world that only anger justifies his strength. But the Stoic teaches this. Let your principle, not your pain, be your voice. When someone oversteps, you respond from the iron border, not in fury, but in form. You say, "That doesn't work for me." You say, "I won't continue this conversation in this tone." You say, "I'm not available for that request." You don't flinch, you don't explain, you don't shrink. Because the moment you begin defending the why, you've already surrendered the what. There is a kind of man, soft-spoken, calm, and deeply respected, not because he dominates others, but because his boundaries are immovable. You can feel them in his presence. You can hear them in the silence after his words. You can see them in the way he leaves a room when it no longer honors his values. He doesn't yell. He doesn't argue. He simply does not compromise where it matters most. This is power. And if you have never drawn those lines, if you've never taken the blow of someone's disapproval and remained firm, then you have never tasted the strength that Stoicism demands. Because this is not about being liked. This is about being whole. And people will test you. They will escalate. They will say you've changed. They will call you difficult, cold, arrogant, selfish. Let them. Because when you finally begin to protect the sacred geometry of your soul, the ones who fed on your silence will call your voice aggression. The ones who disrespected you will call your standards control. The ones who benefited from your obedience will call your clarity betrayal. But a lion does not lose sleep over the discomfort of sheep. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." That what you have to do is often painful. It means walking away from old circles. It means saying no without guilt. It means risking discomfort for the sake of inner order. But if you don't, if you continue to absorb disrespect like rain, you will rust from the inside. You will smile on the outside while slowly dissolving behind your eyes. So build the iron border. Let it be invisible but absolute. Let it be quiet but undeniable. Let it be unspoken yet deeply felt in every room you walk into. And here's the secret. Once you fully commit to this kind of boundary, you'll no longer have to enforce it. People will feel it. They'll sense it in your tone, in your gaze, in your stillness. Because a man who defends his worth does not need to raise his voice. His presence is enough. Wisdom seeker, if you remember nothing else from this strategy, remember this. You are not obligated to make anyone comfortable with your self-respect. Respect is not something you earn by shrinking. It is something you reveal by standing. And once you stand, the world either adjusts or disappears. Let it. Strategy 3. The strength of non-need. The most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest, not the most physically dominant, not the one surrounded by attention or praise. The most dangerous man in any room is the one who needs nothing from it. He is the man who does not chase approval, does not flinch at rejection, does not seek permission to be what he already is. And because he needs nothing, he cannot be controlled. This is the third strategy, and it is not easy. It demands you look at every place in your life where disrespect is allowed to live, and see how much of it remains because you need something from someone. Validation, affection, inclusion, recognition, applause, safety, status. The man who needs nothing cannot be manipulated, but the man who craves belonging will swallow insult just to stay invited. The man who needs to be liked will laugh at jokes made at his expense. The man who fears being alone will keep the company of those who quietly poison his dignity. Seneca warned, "He who is everywhere is nowhere." But in our case, he who belongs to everyone belongs to no one, especially not to himself. Disrespect, more often than we admit, is a transaction. They offer contempt. We pay for it with silence. And the currency we use? Need. There is no shame in wanting connection. No shame in valuing relationships. But there's danger, deep danger, in being owned by them. The Stoic knew that detachment is not indifference. It is clarity. It is saying, I will walk with you, I will respect you, but I will not collapse for you. And this, for many, is terrifying, because we are taught, especially as men, that our worth is tied to how much we can carry, how much we can tolerate, how much we can give without ever asking for something in return. But Stoicism doesn't teach you to be a mule. It teaches you to be a monument, not cold, not distant, but self-sufficient. Epictetus, born into slavery, knew this truth better than most. He said, wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Now consider that on a psychological level. What do you want from those who disrespect you? That they finally acknowledge you? That they change? That they see your worth? That they apologize? But what if they never do? What if they continue to diminish you? What if they never rise to meet you? Not because you're unworthy, but because they are committed to standing below. You cannot wait for someone else's evolution to validate your dignity. You cannot wait for someone's change to confirm that you are always valuable. You must decide now to no longer be fed by their recognition, to no longer shrink when they withdraw, to no longer stay where your power is quietly traded for peace. Because here's the paradox: the less you need, the more you attract. When you no longer need respect to feel respected, people will feel it in your presence. When you no longer need kindness to be kind, people will notice the strength in your stillness. When you no longer need validation to speak your truth, your words will echo like thunder through every room that once silenced you. This is what the Stoics meant by freedom. Not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to remain unchanged by what others do. This strength is not explosive. It's not a performance. It's quiet, grounded, heavy. It anchors you in storms. It stabilizes you when others spin, and it gives you a power that no one can take because it was never given by them in the first place. This is the man you must become. Not the one who begs for scraps of attention, not the one who dances for crumbs of approval, not the one who sells his voice for acceptance, but the one who walks away, even from the table he helped build, when it no longer feeds his soul. There's a quote often misattributed and misunderstood, but powerful nonetheless. If you don't come from a wealthy family, let a wealthy family come from you. Apply that here. If you did not come from a place of respect, let respect come from you. Let your actions teach others how to treat you. Let your composure correct their tone. Let your standards speak more loudly than your complaints. And above all, let your lack of need be your greatest weapon. Because when you stop needing people to respect you, that's when they begin to. And when they don't, you'll still be whole. You'll still be sovereign. You'll still be free. And in a world that trades dignity for dependency, that kind of man is rare. But wisdom seeker, you are not here to be common. You are here to be complete. And you will be. Strategy 4. The stillness of the unoffended. To walk through life unoffended is not to be indifferent. It is not to be numb, unaware, or detached from the currents of human behavior. No, to be unoffended is to be supreme, not above others, but above the chaos they carry with them. This strategy is not passive. It is not about tolerating disrespect. It is about transforming how you experience it, turning what was once a blade into vapor. Most men burn in reaction. Their anger is the automatic consequence of insult. Their identity is tied to external approval, so when someone spits on that approval, they feel erased. They lash out, they argue, they scream, they become fire to fight fire, and in doing so, become exactly what they hate. But the Stoic doesn't catch fire. He becomes stone. Not dead stone, not cold stone, but eternal stone. Stone shaped by the gods, calm, unmoved, and impenetrable by the small flames of petty men. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." Do you understand the power of this? The moment you decide that disrespect is not a threat to your value, it no longer is. The moment you realize that an insult has no weight until your ego picks it up, it becomes nothing more than sound. To be unoffended is to be in command. Because here's the reality: being offended is often just a disguise for a bruised ego. It is the inner child demanding vengeance. It is the illusion that your peace lives in the hands of other people. And so long as that illusion rules your mind, you are not free. You are enslaved. Stoicism breaks those chains with this one truth: what belongs to you cannot be taken by words. Not your character, not your essence, not your stillness. People will try to provoke you, often subtly. They will disguise their jabs as jokes. They will test your composure with sideways remarks, with passive aggression, with social games that aim to unseat your dignity. But here is where you rise. Not by playing their game, but by stepping off the board completely. You look into the fire of their intention and remain untouched. Not because you are pretending, but because you know your value is not on trial here. Theirs is. The man who needs to insult is revealing his hunger, his emptiness, his insecurity. The man who remains unoffended reveals his center, deep, anchored, sovereign. This is not silence out of weakness. It is silence out of superiority. A superiority not over people, but over the need to engage with pettiness. Do not confuse this with being passive. If a boundary must be drawn, draw it. If distance must be created, create it. But do it from a place of calm command, not wounded pride. Because here's the secret: When you stop reacting, you start dominating the space. Not with intimidation, but with presence. People feel your control, and they don't know what to do with it. They expect you to break. They want you to play along. They're used to control through reaction. But you give them nothing. And in giving nothing, you take everything. The man who is easily offended is easily controlled. The man who is always outraged is always predictable. But the man who walks unbothered through verbal fire, he becomes mythic. Because no one can tell where his edges are. They sense it, but they cannot reach it. The world today celebrates outrage. It rewards the loudest victim, the fastest to anger, the quickest to cry injustice. But the Stoic doesn't play that game. He doesn't need to be right in the eyes of those who can't even see. He doesn't need to defend himself against those who attack from ignorance. He doesn't need to win arguments that aren't worthy of his breath. Because he has already won, not in debate, but in discipline. To be unoffended is to be a master of emotion. It is to reject the leash of the world's approval. It is to guard your temple from intrusion, not with swords, but with silence so powerful it echoes. The next time someone disrespects you, test this power. Pause. Observe. Ask, what is truly at risk here? If your peace can be shattered by words, it was never real peace. If your confidence collapses at mockery, it was never true confidence. Let this moment be a forge, and let the fire temper you. Don't fight to prove you are unshaken. Be unshaken. There is no louder statement. And those who seek to provoke you will learn this. You cannot threaten what is not afraid. You cannot insult what is not insecure. You cannot offend the man who has nothing to prove. Wisdom seeker, this is the strength of the unoffended. It is not softness. It is not avoidance. It is not fear. It is power, distilled. It is what makes kings out of common men. And it is yours if you choose it. Strategy 5. The nobility of distance. There's a kind of power that does not announce itself. It does not shout. It does not storm out. It does not explain its departure. It simply leaves. Quietly, fully, completely. This is the power of distance, not as a tactic of manipulation, but as an act of nobility. As a declaration that what you carry within you is sacred and will not be offered where it is mishandled. A man who practices Stoicism does not beg to be understood. He does not perform his worth. He does not argue with blindness. When he is disrespected, he does not try to convert those who live beneath the dignity of their own behavior. He withdraws, not in retreat, but in triumph. Because distance is not weakness, it is wisdom. Distance is not coldness, it is the final boundary. When someone no longer earns your presence, the most powerful response is not retaliation, but removal. But let's make something very clear. This is not escape. This is not avoidance. It is not walking away because you cannot handle conflict. It is walking away because you no longer feed conflict with your attention. Seneca once wrote, "Associate with people who are likely to improve you." Now pause there. Read it again, slowly. This is not just advice on friendship, it is a spiritual principle. Because the people you tolerate shape the man you become. Every moment you spend in the company of those who disrespect you is a quiet agreement to live beneath your highest self. You absorb what you allow, and over time, the man who stays too long in the wrong places begins to lose pieces of himself. He becomes reactive, bitter, shrinking, not because he is weak, but because he has forgotten he is allowed to leave. You do not have to argue. You do not have to prove your side. You do not have to teach them how to treat you. Sometimes the most stoic response is to disappear from the places that refuse to recognize your silence as strength. Distance is not an act of violence. It is the medicine of the soul. You gain clarity when you leave noise. You gain perspective when you step outside of the storm. You remember who you are when you stop standing beside those who benefit from you forgetting. Think of the river that overflows its banks. That is emotion unguarded. That is the reaction of the undisciplined. But the Stoic is not a flooded stream. He is a reservoir, deep, measured, and held in place by the walls he's built with reason and restraint. And when something contaminates that reservoir, he does not rage. He drains it. He lets go of what poisons peace. That is what distance is. It is the sacred act of purification, of choosing your environment as carefully as a warrior chooses his weapons. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." But your thoughts are shaped by your surroundings. And the people who mock your values, undermine your focus, or disrespect your presence are not just distractions, they are distortions. Proximity to the wrong person is the quiet death of self-respect. So what does it mean to create distance? It means stepping back without a grudge. It means removing access without hatred. It means allowing them to wonder why you left, not as revenge, but as the natural consequence of your evolution. You don't need to make a scene. You don't need to announce your worth. You simply exit, and you do it with the same dignity they could never give you. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand. Let them twist the story. The Stoic does not waste breath rewriting the narrative. He lets time do that, because eventually distance reveals the truth that closeness concealed. And here is a secret most men never learn. The ones who respect you the least will scream the loudest when you finally stop making yourself available to them. Why? Because they fed on your presence, not for its value, but for its silence. Your presence affirmed their power. Your tolerance gave them control. Your nearness was their license to continue. And when you withdraw, they're forced to face themselves, and many cannot bear the sight. But that is not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for healing those who disrespect your peace. You are responsible for protecting it. This is the nobility of distance. It is not a punishment. It is a realignment. You are simply returning your time, your energy, your presence back to yourself. And what you do with it next is what defines the path ahead. Wisdom seeker, remember this. You owe no one access to you, not out of guilt, not out of history, not out of obligation, not out of fear. Your value does not require constant proof. And when it goes unseen, it is not your job to shine brighter. It is your duty to walk in the direction where light is recognized. Distance, then, is not just a response to disrespect. It is the preservation of destiny, so preserve it and walk. Strategy 6. The discipline of self-respect. There is no armor more impenetrable than a man's relationship with himself. Not the clothes he wears, not the titles he carries, not the applause he collects, nor the fear he inspires. These are shadows, temporary, fragile. They crumble when challenged, fade when ignored, vanish when the world turns cold. But a man who respects himself walks untouched through storms that would drown lesser men. This is the final strategy, and it is the most difficult. Because while the previous strategies have shown you how to endure disrespect from others, this one demands something higher, that you confront the places in yourself where you have allowed it. Not from them, but from you. Because the greatest betrayal is not what someone says about you. It's what you start to believe. When someone disrespects you, their words are not the final act. Your reaction is. And over time, without discipline, their doubt becomes your silence. Their dismissal becomes your hesitation. Their mockery becomes your inner voice. You stop showing up for yourself. You shrink, you adapt, you compromise. You become more digestible, more passive, more palatable to the world that never respected you in the first place. And in doing so, you abandon yourself. But not the Stoic. The Stoic does not run from the mirror. He walks to it, and he asks, where have I disrespected my own spirit? Where have I stayed silent when I should have spoken? Where have I tolerated what my soul rejected? Where have I made peace with my own erosion? Because the truth is simple and brutal. People do not disrespect you randomly. They follow the trail you leave. Every time you betray your standard, you lower your price. Every time you entertain mockery, you teach others how to reach you. Every time you remain silent around dishonor, you participate in it. So this final strategy is not about confronting them. It's about confronting the places inside where you stopped confronting yourself. And here's what you will find if you're brave enough to look. That most disrespect starts not with hatred, but with permission. Your permission. Your permission to stay too long. Your permission to respond when you should have ignored. Your permission to explain when you should have simply walked away. Your permission to need what should have never been chased. The discipline of self-respect is the refusal to grant that permission anymore. It is a daily act of sacred rebellion against the parts of you that want to be liked more than they want to be honest. It is rising each morning and deciding, I will not participate in my own disrespect today. Even when it's comfortable. Even when it's disguised as kindness. Even when it comes dressed as patience or humility or politeness. because too many men confuse tolerance with virtue. They mistake peacekeeping for power. They believe that enduring mistreatment quietly is the same as being strong. But a man who respects himself is not quiet for approval. He is quiet because he knows what is worthy of his voice. He does not argue with disrespect. He does not demand acknowledgement. He does not go where he must shrink to survive. He simply becomes unavailable, not as an act of revenge, but as a declaration: I will no longer be present where I am not honored. That is the discipline of self-respect. It is not an event. It is not a quote. It is not a feeling. It is a daily lived boundary, enforced not with emotion, but with consistency. It shows in the posture of the man who refuses to chase. It shows in the tone of the man who doesn't raise his voice to be heard because his presence already speaks. It shows in the decisions made when no one is watching. The things you no longer tolerate quietly. The people you stop explaining yourself to. It is the understanding that if your peace comes at the cost of your integrity, it is not peace, it is bondage. And the Stoic does not serve false masters. He serves only what is true. So here is your challenge, wisdom seeker. Walk through the corridors of your life. Examine the rooms of your behavior. Look at the relationships you keep, the roles you play, the words you use, and ask, does this honor the man I am becoming? If the answer is no, begin the quiet revolution. Pull back your energy. Withdraw your efforts. Reclaim the strength you once spent convincing others to value you. You are not here to be understood by everyone. You are here to be respected by yourself. Because when a man respects himself, deeply, fully, without condition, the world begins to reflect that back, or it runs, or it fights, but it can no longer ignore him. And even if it does, he walks on, because he is no longer seeking approval from the world. He has become the world, a world unto himself, solid, still, discipline-free, and that wisdom seeker is the ultimate strategy.